So for India, the primary concern is strategic. What will happen when any future India-Pakistan military confrontation? We must factor whether that would involve the potentially involve Saudis or not. And then also it will complicate India's response calculations to Pakistani-sponsored terrorism. That could also potentially frame Indian retaliation, because they will dub the Indian retaliation as a aggression against both nations. So that would complicate, and it will be a testing time for our relationship with Saudi Arabia.
You're on the Gist on Strat News Global. I'm Surya Gangadharan. So welcome to this edition of the Gist, where we are going to analyze the mutual defense agreement between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan that was signed just a few days ago. My expert here, my guest is Ausaf Sayeed, former ambassador to Saudi Arabia, somebody who follows the region very closely. Ambassador Sayeed, welcome.
Thank you very much, Surya.
So first things first, this new defense treaty, is it actually new? Don't the Saudis and the Pakistanis have a long-standing
Surya, the Strategic Mutual Defense Agreement, which was signed on September 17, it actually represents a formalization and a significant upgrade to the long-standing Pakistan-Saudi defense relations, which you know that they did back to 60s. And so it's not entirely a new relationship, but an upgrade. Of course, the earlier, the defense cooperation between the two countries included military training, personnel deployment, joint exercises, and all that. But this particular agreement transforms this informal security relationship into a binding treaty, which we can compare it to NATO's Article 5. Particularly, I would say that the explicit mutual defense clause in the agreement, which states that any aggression against either country shall be considered an aggression against both, this has generated a lot of global interest, all across the world.
Mm-hmm. So, I saw that in the joint statement. Is it there in the agreement as such? Because I'm not sure that has been publicized.
The agreement does not explicitly extend Pakistan's nuclear umbrella to Saudi Arabia. However, it creates sufficient ambiguity to allow for multiple interpretations. So, official position of Pakistan is that nuclear weapons are not on the radar, and the Pact focuses on the conventional defense cooperation only. But practically, if you see, the contradictory statements which are being made create deliberate ambiguity from both sides, suggesting that there is a possible open interpretation for nuclear cooperation. So in this, I think the kingdom benefits from this perception of nuclear protection without formal nuclear commitments from Pakistan. So the reality, I think, is both countries would benefit from strategic ambiguity. Saudi Arabia gains implied security deterrence benefits, while Pakistan avoids explicit nuclear commitments that would potentially violate non-proliferation norms and also complicate its India-centric doctrine. So if you have been, seeing the defense minister of Pakistan, Khwaja Asif, has been making contradictory statements. So, when he made two different statements on September 19, within a span of few hours. First, when initial statement to GOTV, he said that the nuclear facilities will be available to the kingdom, but within hours, he said that it is not on the radar. So I think both countries are following a very carefully calibrated approach that provides deterrence benefits through ambiguity rather than explicit nuclear guarantees.
Mm-hmm. Does this put Pakistan on the Israeli hit list, because we have some kind of a commitment from the Pakistanis to the Saudis?
Yeah, I think this is a challenge which the Pakistanis will face, because the agreement does create risks for Pakistan regarding potential Israeli actions. The Pakistan's threat level on Israel's priority will likely increase significantly following this. Particularly, the nuclear dimension, as I mentioned before, is a matter of great concern for Israel. as the pact effectively brings nuclear deterrence into the Middle East security equation in a new way.
Yeah.
So while Pakistan maintains that its nuclear doctrine is India specific, the explicit extension of the nuclear capabilities to Saudi Arabia under this mutual defense agreement creates unprecedented complications for Israel's strategic planning. Moreover, I think again, if you have been following, the Pakistani officials, particularly the defense minister, had criticized Israel also very recently after the agreement
Yeah.
was signed on its own nuclear weapons program. And some of these officials have been actually making hostile statements towards Israel. So I wonder whether Pakistan is consciously accepting increased Israeli hostility at the cost of the Saudi partnership.
Mhm. You think the Saudis would have given us some indication that they were going to do a deal with these guys?
I think the Saudis have not given any such indication as far as my reading goes, because neither they would have taken the Americans on board, maybe with the specific details of this, nor in the region or any other country, because the very nature of this agreement is such that they had to maintain the kind of confidentiality, because
Mhm.
going back to your question, because Pakistan is giving a nuclear deterrence to Saudi Arabia, there is a possibility that it is also subjected to Israeli strikes or some
Yeah.
kind of intelligence operation. So it is a great risk which the Pakistanis have taken actually vis-a-vis with Israel.
Mhm. Do you envisage Pakistani nukes being moved to Saudi Arabia?
No, I don't think that is possible. Basically, I think it is a political statement of nuclear deterrence. But physically moving the Pakistani assets to Saudi Arabia, I think it could be ruled out, because one, it could violate the non-proliferation regime, and the Pakistan may face sanctions from US. Second, while Pakistan's doctrine is India specific, they would not like to kind of disturb that military
Mm.
equilibrium vis-a-vis India. So I really do not think that this would be possible.
Mhm. But since we already have Pakistani troops on Saudi soil, are those numbers going to go up? Because I was reading some reports that they've been moved to the border with Yemen.
You see, I mean, traditionally Pakistan had been, supplying, all these experts and foot soldiers to Saudi Arabia in various conflicts, and Yemen is one such. Historically speaking, Pakistan at one point of time the peak was about 20,000, but now I think generally reduced to 1,600. You are correct that there have been unconfirmed reports suggesting that Pakistan has deployed 25,000 troops on the Saudi-Yemeni border, but this is a very risky move, because any involvement of Pakistan in the Saudi Houthi conflict could, spread the conflict, bring the conflict somewhere in South Asia. Already, the Houthi officials have said that the Saudi-Yemeni border would turn into a graveyard for Pakistani soldiers if this. So this is there. But at the same time, Pakistan's new emergence as a security player in the broader Middle Eastern conflicts, gives a significant shift to its traditional stance of neutrality in Middle Eastern conflict. So I really do not know where it will take, but it is definitely a risky move if Pakistan indeed decides to send troops to Yemen.
Mhm. Where does this leave the India-Pak hyphenation? Does that deepen? I mean, how are the Saudis seeing this?
You see, for a long time, India has been very careful in resisting any kind of hyphenation with Pakistan. So the
Yeah.
agreement does create new risks for this hyphenation to come in, because if you recollect, President Trump also had used this hyphenation,
Yeah.
during the Operation Sindoor. Trump had also mentioned about India and Pakistan being two great countries, and also equating Indian Prime Minister with the Pakistani Prime Minister, and so on. But I would say that although we would make all attempts to ensure that there is no hyphenation as such, but there is definitely a risk of this kind of hyphenation willy-nilly coming in despite our efforts.
Mhm. What are we going to be telling the Saudis? I mean, I presume if we have not been informed or anything,
Yeah.
do you expect we'll take it up with the Saudis at some point?
No. I think definitely we will take up, with Saudi authorities, because firstly, the pact poses significant challenges to our relationship, not only with Saudi Arabia but also with the broader Gulf. So,
Yeah.
despite Saudi assurances that ties with India would remain more robust than they have been ever, the agreement introduces new dynamics, complex dynamics, as we know. So, for India, the primary concern is strategic. What will happen when in any future India-Pakistan military confrontation? We must factor whether that would involve the potentially involve Saudis or not. And then also it will complicate India's response calculations to Pakistani-sponsored terrorism. That could also potentially frame Indian retaliation, because they will dub the Indian retaliation as a aggression against both nations. So that would complicate, and it will be a testing time for our relationship with Saudi Arabia. How Saudi would react. But having said that, I must say that our very strong economic and energy ties with the kingdom, also mutually growing investments, the buffer of the diaspora, would eventually, act as a buffer for any kind of Saudi involvement. If the Saudis do get involved, perhaps it will be more as a mediator or rather than anything else. India has urged Saudi Arabia to consider its mutual sensitivities, highlighting the risks of regional instability that could affect broader partnerships.
How has the India-Saudi relationship been affected by India's large-scale purchases of discounted Russian oil?
I can say with my experience as ambassador to Saudi Arabia is that the Saudis have not been very happy, because see, for Saudi Arabia, their own budget is built on a dollar rate of 85, US dollars 85 to 90 plus, in that. So any country which is undermining that by lowering the oil prices is something which would affect their diversification program, especially under the Vision 2030. So when the quantities were going down because of the concessional oil, the Saudis were not very happy, and they have actually expressed that so to us. But we have also conveyed to them that the spiraling effect of the rising oil prices on our own economy, and it also becomes a domestic political issue. So while this definitely hurts the OPEC and the Saudi this thing, but I think they still want India to remain as one of their cherished energy partners. So between India and China, these are the two top partners for them. And if you also include Japan and South Korea, Asia is the biggest market for them. So they would not rock the boat. So while they may be unhappy, they would continue to engage with us in a comprehensive energy dialogue and other things. And they have even, as you know, that they have even promised to invest in our strategic reserves.
What are India's options at this point, given the Saudi thing and the possibility that others may join, Qatar, UAE also?
Yes, see, the other countries would also likely to join. But our options are that we should not kind of take this as India specific agreement. It doesn't necessarily be India specific agreement. We have very strong historic ties with the region, going back to several thousands of years, both culturally, historically. So I think we should kind of continue to engage in hard diplomacy, specifically economic diplomacy, and And not only that, we should strengthen defense and security cooperation. We should strengthen maritime cooperation, and then give put our best foot forward, and then offer things which no other country would offer to the region. So in that way, they would know that India is a most valuable partner, and they can the agreement their agreement with Pakistan can coexist independently with very strong relationship with India.
Mhm. There is a criticism from certain sections of our foreign policy establishment people, academics, that we steer clear of any security involvement in that region. Is that a valid criticism?
Yes, I think you see the turbulent nature and of the world now, and also more particularly focusing on West Asia, is that you see anything which happens of significance, we see the world leaders react immediately. Especially the regional leaders are there. So when the Israeli attacks on Doha took place, what happened? You see the all the neighboring leaders landed up there, and also we saw the Pakistani Prime Minister go there, and he again
Yeah.
went a second time, for that meeting, Arab League and OIC meeting. So the other countries, what they are doing is they are elevating their diplomatic engagement, making it more proactive. In our case, I think we should move towards this direction. We have the advantage as a country that we are our strategic autonomy is well known to the region. So we are acceptable to the Gulf countries. We are acceptable to Iran and Israel. All the adversaries in the region. So I think we should play a more proactive role rather than just making some statements or calls, which I think
Yeah.
may not be adequate at this point of time, because our own interests are involved in the region. So we have to be proactive. We are not doing a favor to anyone, but we are doing a favor to ourselves by doing this. I do not say that we should get involved in any military conflicts as such, but we can actually upscale our diplomatic engagement. For example, you are aware that China's engagement had always been economic engagement, but
Yeah.
more recently they got involved in bringing about a rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, two adversaries, and now you see that rapprochement has actually stood despite all the turbulence there. And most recently, also China hosted more than 14 different factions of the
Appeal.
of the Palestinian factions in Beijing. So this is an example of proactive diplomacy, which I think India can do it. In fact, India can surpass all these efforts because of our historic connect and deep economic engagement which is there. So this is what will see India sail through as the Middle East is getting churned and new strategic alliances will emerge. Otherwise, what will happen is that while they will value our economic cooperation, they may not see India of any value as far as security cooperation is concerned, or bringing about regional stability is concerned.
Mhm. What is holding us back? Why are we so wary of getting involved?
No, I think
Do we lack
generally
resources,
no,
capacity?
no. I don't think we lack capacity or the resources, but I think generally, I think this is a policy which we have inherited, the non-aligned policies, where we don't get involved in conflicts because we don't want new fronts to open up. We have to also, like, our economy is growing. We have to also focus on development and other things. So I think that is one. Of course, military. We cannot compare ourselves with the resources which may be available with China and others, but we do not lack the will and political acceptability. So I'm saying that maybe we should upscale a bit, so that we become a greater voice of dependence. So if there is anything happening like that, the Gulf countries will be the first countries to call India, seek its advice, and that kind of a thing like that. Similarly, you have seen in Europe, anything which happens within few hours, the European leaders will fly from one capital to another,
Yeah.
congregate, discuss. So this is how the world is becoming very proactive. So
Mhm.
gone are the days where we are only evaluating something for days together before responding. So by the time the events will overtake, the overtake on ground.
Hmm. But it's still not clear why we steer clear of this, you know. I mean, non-alignment, all that is okay, you know. But this is something in our neighborhood.
Yes, I mean, that, as I said, with Pakistan emerging as a security player, it
Yeah.
adds a new dimension of complexity to us. So we do have to be very proactive, with all stakeholders in the region, and then ensure that our voice is heard, our interests are taken into before factoring any kind of military relationship. We have all the things going on in the region. We have the very important IMEC, which was launched during India's G20 presidency in September 2023. It has to take off now with so much of turbulence in the region. And as you know, this IMEC passes through Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Arabia is a nodal country for that. So,
Yeah.
what would happen in this new scenario of Pakistan emerging as a security partner there? Will it further dilute? Because as it is, we have been facing resource constraints and logistics constraints because of the turbulence in the region. At the same time, I think we should also have a frank discussion with Israel. It's a strategic partner for India. We said any of your actions which are not uh, well calibrated could lead to the region getting into turmoil. The moment we say region getting into turmoil, it directly affects India, because say that, for example, strikes in Doha has brought the conflict right at our doorsteps.
Yeah.
So it could potentially dislocate our diaspora. Maybe it would, if things become worse, we have to arrange for evacuations. So these are all very cumbersome exercises, and our resources and attention will be diverted away from core diplomatic military engagement. So I think this is what we need to do: a multi-pronged approach, hard diplomacy, much harder security and defense cooperation, maritime cooperation. That should continue. We have all the platforms available at our disposal. For example, with Saudi Arabia, we have the Strategic Partnership Council that is so detailed. Saudi Arabia hitherto doesn't have that kind of a detailed agreement. So and the leadership is connects with each other very well. So I think we have all these positive things in our favor. So I think let us put our heads together and then move ahead. You know?
Mhm. Do you think India should have a special envoy for the region at this stage?
You see, we did have special envoys in the past. There
Yeah.
are two lines of thought on that. One, the political thought at that point of time when we had the envoys was that, see, what the traditional diplomacy can't achieve fully. This is where the second level of diplomacy could do so. So the special envoy need not be at loggerheads with the legitimate ambassadors in the
Existing.
region, but work together. But at the
Mm.
same time, there is another school of thought within the MEA, which I think doesn't favor that. They feel that their efforts are undermined by such external actors. But I feel, as I said, we really have to think out of box, because you just look at other countries. I'm just giving you an example of OIC. OIC, there are envoys from US, envoys from China, envoys from Russia, all that. They're non-members, but still are sending their envoys. So what does it
Mm.
mean? There is an engagement. So if there is an engagement, what will happen is that whenever there are these resolutions and others, they will all be, taking their inputs into account. So while we have seen that OIC has never criticized China on anything, whether Uyghur
Yeah.
Muslims or whatever else, in fact, they are patting their back, because and then China has emerged as one of the strongest partners of the Islamic world. So
Yeah.
whereas it should have been India as the strongest partner. We regard Saudi Arabia as the legitimate leader of the Islamic Ummah. That is in our interest too. But I
Mm.
think we really need to, the all wings of the government, whether it is NSA's office, MEA, Prime Minister's office, should kind of converge and evolve a new strategy, a diplomatic and security strategy to deal with this evolving situation. And the earlier it is done, I think the better would be for protecting our interest in the longer run.
Mhm. Last word, looking at Israel, how do you think they are reacting to this?
You see, I think Israel is very. It was taken aback. It is very much worried that a new player has emerged, in the Gulf scene, because while they could easily manage non-nuclear, Gulf countries, any kind of
Yeah.
response from them, but now that Pakistan has come in, it creates a new dimension for them. And as second thing is also that the waning influence of Americans, which is a strong ally of Israel, also creates a new security paradigm there. We really do
Mm.
not know in what way it will involve. It will push the Israelis backwards, and you know that they would be compelled to come forward for discussions to resolve the conflict with Hamas, and then eventually also look for a long-term solution for the Palestinian state. The fact that more and more countries, most recently three other countries, UK, Canada, and Australia, coming forward to recognize the Palestinian state, and maybe in the UNGA, France and some other countries in Europe may also follow through. What does it
Yeah.
mean is that globally there is a thinking developing that it is time that Israel stops his aggression, and then look for serious mechanisms to deal with this problem. So our stance, of course, is very clear. We did some flip flops in the beginning, but then now we are very clearly stating about the two nation theory, which has been our traditional stance. So I think
Mm.
this is what we should aim at: use our leverage for a peaceful solution. Because if that is resolved in the Gulf, automatically many other issues will be resolved. Abraham Accords, with which the whole world had high hopes, when in 2020, when they were signed with UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco, there was an indication that other countries would follow through. But now these actions of irresponsible actions of Israel has actually pushed them back also
Yeah.
in a way, creating difficulties for our own groupings like I2U2 and others. So this is there. And one of the things, of course, which we should also engage in, is that we should push for these activities, connectivity projects, which we mentioned about IMEC. Somehow we should negotiate and let it go forward. Plus also the other connectivity projects which we have, Chabahar
Yeah.
Port and Rasin, North-South corridor. All this would actually provide leverage to us in the longer run to neutralize, or at least give a proper response to this evolving scene of Pakistan emerging on the scene.
So complicated scenario, and I think we are agreed that India should be far more active than it has been so far, and we do need to be talking to all the actors in this region more proactively on security issues too. Ambassador Ausaf Sayeed, thank you for that perspective and insight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Enjoy talking to you.
That's all we have in this broadcast. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media. Thank you very much.